Everything I worked for is gone. He didn't say it dramatically. He didn't scream it. He didn't throw anything across the room. He just sat on the edge of a mattress, lying directly on the floor of an apartment that barely contained enough furniture to echo, staring at a cardboard box filled with the last pieces of a life that no longer existed. And if you've ever lost something that mattered, you know exactly what kind of silence that is. It's the silence after the phone call, the silence after the breakup, the silence after the email, the silence after the dream dies. Not the loud kind of pain, the quiet kind, the kind that follows you into the grocery store, the kind that sits next to you while you're driving, the kind that waits for you when you wake up. Maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe nobody around you realizes how much has changed. Maybe they think you're just having a rough week. Maybe they think you'll bounce back. Maybe they think you're strong, and maybe you are. But strength doesn't mean you don't hurt. Strength doesn't mean you don't grieve. Strength doesn't mean you don't sit in the shower longer than usual, because for 10 minutes it's the only place where nobody expects anything from you. There is a version of pain that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like showing up to work while your heart is broken. It looks like answering texts when you don't know what to say. It looks like lying awake at 1:37 in the morning, replaying conversations that are already over. It looks like wondering whether you should have tried harder, spoken sooner, stayed longer, left earlier, chosen differently. And that's the cruelty of loss. When something leaves your life, it rarely takes only one thing. A lost relationship can steal certainty. A lost job can steal confidence. A failed dream can steal identity. Loss has a way of taking more than it first appears. Because human beings are storytellers. We don't just lose people. We lose futures. We don't just lose opportunities. We lose imagined versions of ourselves. And sometimes what breaks our heart isn't what happened. It's what will never happen now. That's why this matters. Because if you've lost everything, or at least it feels that way, you're standing in one of the most misunderstood moments in human life. Everyone talks about success. Everyone talks about achievement. Everyone talks about winning. Very few people talk honestly about what happens when the entire structure you've been leaning against disappears. When the promotion never comes. When the marriage ends. When the business fails. When the dream you've carried for years slips through your fingers. What then? Who are you then? Why continue then? A few years ago, there was a young man who had built his entire identity around being successful. Not wealthy, not famous, successful. The kind of person who always had a plan, always had goals, always knew the next step. Friends called him driven. Employers called him ambitious. He wore those labels like armor. Because as long as he was moving forward, he never had to ask deeper questions. As long as he was achieving, he never had to wonder who he was without achievement. Then life happened. Not all at once. That's rarely how it works. First came the layoff. Then the relationship ended. Then the apartment became too expensive. Then the savings account began shrinking faster than expected. Within months, the life he had spent years building felt unrecognizable. One night he sat alone eating takeout from a plastic container because most of his dishes were already packed. Rain tapped against the window. His phone remained silent. The city outside kept moving. And for the first time in years, there was nowhere to run. No project, no promotion, no relationship, no distraction. Just him and a question. A terrifying question. If all of this can disappear, who am I without it? That question changed everything, because most of us spend our lives building identities out of things that can leave. Careers, relationships, status, money, achievements, approval. None of those things are bad, but they are unstable foundations. They're wonderful things to have. They're dangerous things to become, because eventually life tests every foundation. Not because life is cruel, because life is honest. Life eventually asks every one of us the same question. What remains when what you depended on is gone? The answer to that question is where real strength begins. Not performative strength, not social media strength, not motivational quote strength. Real strength. The kind nobody sees. The kind built in empty rooms. The kind built after disappointment. The kind built when applause disappears. The young man spent months trying to get his old life back. Months trying to reverse reality. Months negotiating with the past. And that's what many people do. We don't grieve the loss. We argue with it. We keep replaying alternate timelines. We keep rewriting conversations. We keep imagining different outcomes, as if enough thinking can change what already happened. But healing begins the moment reality stops being your enemy. Healing begins when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Not because every tragedy has a simple lesson, not because pain is automatically meaningful, but because suffering without meaning crushes people, and suffering with meaning transforms them. One question creates victims, the other creates growth. The same event, different response, different future, and slowly something unexpected happened. Not externally, internally. He stopped measuring his worth by his circumstances. He stopped treating setbacks like verdicts. He stopped assuming that loss meant failure. And that's when he discovered a truth that changed his life. Sometimes life removes what was holding you up, so you can discover what is holding you together. Read that again. Sometimes life removes what was holding you up, so you can discover what is holding you together. That is the difference between dependence and strength. Dependence says, "I can only be okay if these conditions remain." Strength says, "Even if these conditions change, I remain." And the moment you understand that difference, loss begins to